A bright, talented 18-year-old girl with her whole future ahead of her vanished without a trace. What began as a typical night of laughter and friends at Ohio State University ended in tragedy. The search for answers would stretch over a decade, but the truth, when it finally came, shocked everyone. Stephanie Hummer was born on August 4, 1975 in Cincinnati, Ohio, to a supportive family who always prioritized education and hard work. From a young age, Stephanie displayed exceptional academic abilities. She was a dedicated student who earned straight A's and became well known for her involvement in various extracurricular activities. Whether it was playing soccer, participating in softball, or mastering the violin, Stephanie's passion for learning and commitment to excellence were evident in all aspects of her life. Her love for sports extended beyond the typical school activities. Influenced by her father, Stephanie developed a keen interest in golf, which led her to spend several years working as a caddy at a local golf course. This experience not only fueled her passion for the sport, but also provided her with a means to earn money for her future. The hard work and dedication Stephanie put into her golfing career paid off when she earned the prestigious Evans Scholarship, a highly competitive full-tuition scholarship awarded to caddies with exceptional academic records. In 1993, at the age of 18, Stephanie enrolled at Ohio State University, where she decided to study landscape architecture. Her academic excellence continued at the university, where she not only maintained her top grades, but also immersed herself in campus life. She quickly made new friends and remained deeply committed to both her studies and extracurricular activities. Stephanie's bright future was marked by her drive to succeed in everything she pursued. Whether it was academics, sports, or music, she excelled. As a freshman at Ohio State, she was setting herself up for a life of accomplishment with endless possibilities ahead. But tragically, her potential would never be fully realized. On March 5, 1994, as her freshman year at Ohio State University came to an end, Stephanie spent time with her family, who had traveled to Columbus to attend her younger brother's math competition. It was a time for the family to come together, offering moments of joy and support. After the event, Stephanie returned to her dorm where she spent the rest of the evening with two of her best friends from back home. The three of them hung out in Stephanie's room, chatting, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. Around midnight, two male students from Cincinnati, also from Stephanie's hometown, stopped by her dorm. They had been friends from high school and invited Stephanie and her friends to a party that was happening at another dorm about a 15-minute walk away. The invitation was tempting, and after a little hesitation, Stephanie and her friends decided to join them. By 3 a.m., the group set off towards the party. However, their plans were soon interrupted. On the way there, one of the guys tried to climb over a fence and injured his arm. After realizing the severity of the injury, he and the other guy decided to turn back and return to the dorm to tend to it. Stephanie and her friends, initially considering skipping the party, faced a decision. Ultimately, Stephanie decided to continue to the party on her own. She walked her friends back to their dorm before setting off alone towards the other dorm, which was just a short distance away. This would be the last time anyone saw Stephanie alive. She was walking alone in the early hours of the morning, unaware that her life was about to take a tragic turn. The morning after Stephanie went out, her friends were still hopeful that she had simply stayed at the other dorm after the party. At first, they didn't worry too much, thinking she might have just fallen asleep there, but as the hours passed and she still didn't return, the concern began to grow. Stephanie was always responsible, and it wasn't like her to stay out all night without checking in. By midday, with no sign of Stephanie, her friends went to campus police. Her parents, who had already left Columbus after the family event, were contacted. The gravity of the situation hit when they realized that Stephanie had not been heard from in over 12 hours. By noon, her parents officially reported her as missing. A few hours later, a railroad worker, about 4 miles from the campus, made a chilling discovery. As he was rolling along the tracks, he noticed something in the brush. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a woman's body. He immediately contacted his colleagues, and the police were notified. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the body almost entirely undressed, with only the socks and shoes remaining on the victim. The area where the body was found had a notorious reputation, known for criminal activity and illicit encounters, leading investigators to initially suspect the victim might be tied to that world. However, as the investigation progressed, authorities began to consider the possibility that the body might belong to Stephanie, who had been reported missing hours earlier. After further investigation, Stephanie's identity was confirmed, bringing an unsettling clarity to the case. Upon examining the body, investigators quickly determined that Stephanie had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The severity of the injury suggested that the perpetrator had used a heavy object to strike her, likely knocking her unconscious before continuing the attack. In addition to the head injury, signs of sexual assault were evident, and traces of semen were collected for DNA analysis. The collection of forensic evidence was crucial to building the case and providing key insights into the identity of the perpetrator. Though the area where Stephanie's body was discovered was known for criminal activity and illicit encounters, detectives quickly ruled out the possibility that she was connected to that world. The area was notorious, but nothing at the crime scene suggested she was involved in such activities. One of the most significant findings was a set of marks on her neck that resembled Hickey's. This led investigators to speculate that the killer may have been someone Stephanie had encountered earlier that night, possibly even someone she knew. In an effort to understand her last moments, detectives interviewed Stephanie's friends, including those who had been with her at the dorm earlier that evening. They also followed up with the 2 men who had invited her to the party. Both men denied any involvement in the crime, and their alibis were corroborated by others, clearing them as suspects. With no clear evidence pointing to a specific suspect, investigators were left with few leads. Nevertheless, they continued to work the case, knowing that the truth lay somewhere within the events of that night. For months, the investigation into Stephanie's murder hit a standstill. Detectives had followed every lead, but none seemed to lead them closer to the truth. Despite their best efforts, there was no significant progress, and the case seemed to be slipping further into the shadows. However, in 2005, Ohio passed a new law requiring DNA collection from all convicted felons. This law would eventually become pivotal in solving the case. In January 2006, a breakthrough occurred. A match surfaced in the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, a federal database that tracks DNA from criminal investigations. The match was linked to Jonathan Gravely, a local man with a history of minor offenses, but who had never been a suspect in the case. Gravely's DNA had only been entered into the system following a 2004 arrest for failure to pay child support. When investigators received the match, it was a shocking revelation. Gravely had not been on their radar during the initial stages of the investigation, and his name had never come up as a potential suspect. The case, which had been dormant for years, was suddenly reignited. Investigators now had a new lead, and Gravely's DNA connection to the crime scene offered the crucial break they needed. The investigation, which had seemed to stall indefinitely, was given new life, and the search for answers was once again underway. Jonathan Gravely was 24 years old at the time of Stephanie Hummer's murder. He lived just a short distance from Ohio State University, in close proximity to the area where Stephanie's body was found. Gravely had a criminal history, though it was mostly limited to minor offenses. These included arrests for drug-related issues and public disturbances, but none were serious enough to draw attention or place his DNA in the criminal database. By 2006, when Gravely was arrested for failure to pay child support, Ohio's new law requiring DNA collection from all felons led to his DNA being entered into the system. This routine collection would ultimately link him to Stephanie's case. Investigators discovered that at the time of the murder, Gravely had been living in the vicinity of the university and was familiar with the streets where Stephanie was last seen. Despite his criminal background, Gravely had never been a suspect in the original investigation. His name had not come up in any of the interviews or tips, and he had not been linked to the crime in any significant way during the initial search for answers. The DNA match was a turning point in the case, offering investigators the first concrete lead after years of uncertainty. This revelation brought new focus to Gravely and dramatically shifted the direction of the investigation. What had once been an unsolved mystery now had a potential suspect. The DNA evidence was the key that unlocked this new chapter in the long and frustrating search for justice. When Jonathan Gravely was confronted with the DNA match linking him to Stephanie Hummer's murder, he initially denied any involvement. He claimed that on the night of the crime, he had met Stephanie at a bar where they engaged in consensual sex. Afterward, he said they left the bar together and he drove her away from campus. However, this story quickly raised red flags with investigators. It contradicted the established timeline of Stephanie's disappearance and the fact that she had been last seen walking alone near her dorm, far from any bar. As detectives pressed Gravely further, his story began to change. He acknowledged the initial consensual encounter, but claimed the situation escalated when Stephanie tried to leave and threatened to expose him to his wife. Gravely admitted to hitting her, but he continued to deny any further involvement in her death. This new version of events created more questions than answers. Investigators found several inconsistencies in his account, particularly in how the situation had unfolded, which made them doubt his truthfulness. Gravely's shifting statements left investigators unconvinced, and they continued to question his story. His denial of further involvement in the crime clashed with the forensic evidence, leaving detectives with the challenge of piecing together the truth. The confession, though partial, was still a pivotal moment in the investigation, yet his contradictions raised serious doubts about his version of events. As the case against Jonathan Gravely progressed toward trial, his defense attorney sought to have his confession dismissed. The argument was made that his confession had been obtained improperly without the presence of legal counsel and that it should not be admissible in court. Despite these challenges, the prosecution offered a plea deal in an attempt to bring the case to a resolution. Under the terms of the plea deal, the death penalty would be removed in exchange for Gravely pleading guilty to the murder of Stephanie Hummer. In September 2007, Gravely accepted the plea deal and pleaded guilty to Stephanie's murder. This move allowed him to avoid the death penalty, but it was met with deep frustration by the Hummer family. They felt that the deal failed to deliver true justice for their daughter, and that the plea bargain did not adequately account for the pain and loss they had endured. For Stephanie's father, Dan, the plea deal brought mixed emotions. It was a legal resolution to the case, but the emotional toll of losing his daughter remained unchanged. Dan reflected on how this development brought them back to the day Stephanie went missing. While the legal process had reached a conclusion, the family's grief and the absence of Stephanie in their lives remained an unhealed wound. The resolution in court may have brought an end to the trial, but it did nothing to restore the life that had been so tragically taken. The aftermath of Stephanie Hummer's murder left her family to cope with the devastating consequences of her death. While the legal proceedings offered a semblance of justice, the emotional toll on her family was profound and lasting. Stephanie's mother, Sue, never fully recovered from the grief of losing her daughter. Sadly, several years after the conviction, Sue passed away from cancer. her life cut short by the weight of the loss. Stephanie's father, Dan, remains a fierce advocate for his daughter's memory. He continues to oppose any efforts to grant parole to Jonathan Gravely, whose actions tore their family apart. Despite the years of pain and the continued fight for justice, the Hummer family remains determined to honor Stephanie's legacy. In their hometown, a park was named in her memory, a place where family and friends gather to reflect on her life and the impact she had on those around her. The park has become a symbol of resilience and remembrance, offering a quiet space to honor Stephanie and the future she never got to have. Though the tragedy of her death will always cast a shadow over her family, Stephanie's story continues to inspire those who knew her. Her bright future, her dedication, and her passion for life are remembered not just as a loss, but as a reminder of how violent crime can profoundly affect families and entire communities. Stephanie's legacy, marked by love, remembrance, and the fight for justice, lives on through her family, the park in her honor, and the ongoing efforts to ensure her killer remains behind bars.